I am yet again packing all of my hunting and camping gear. I'm heading back to my favourite camping spot for another week for what I'm calling an observation mission. Today's plan is a real simple one. All I gotta do is get myself, my hunting and camping gear to my spot, pitch the tent, get comfortable and enjoy a lazy afternoon around camp. I'm going to climb a tree somewhere close to camp today though. I really want to spend some time practice shooting my bow from my saddle. I recently upped my arrow weight and I just want to make sure, 100% sure, that the arrows are landing right where I want them to on a steep downward angle. I'd imagine the time needed to do that is going to eat up most of the afternoon. So I'll enjoy the sunset as I always do when I'm there. Whoa. I think I'd rather the buck at 25 than 5, but I can do it. If that was a buck, a mature buck, he's on my wall. And then tomorrow, I will head out onto the public to do a big loop around to my spots looking for sign and to pull the cards from my trail cameras. I also want to move my trail cameras around a little bit in the hopes of figuring out some sort of pattern to the deer movements. I have 5 different trees out there now that I want to hunt in the raw. Ideally, on this trip, I would like to get up early, walk to each one of those trees in the dark, climb the tree in the dark, and then sit there and wait for it to get daylight. Just so that come raw time, I know how long it takes to get to each tree, and I'm familiar with the track on my GPS, so I'm not getting caught up in the thick stuff when I should be sitting quietly in a tree. And yes, of course, I would love to see some deer while I'm hanging around in the trees, and it would be insanely cool to film a big mature buck in velvet. And the venison that I'm taking with me on this trip is the last of the venison that I have in my freezer, so I would love to get a meat animal, and preferably a lopsided buck. Finally stopped shaking. That was insanely cool. They came in from behind me and I didn't hear nothing until the closest deer was 10 meters from the base of my tree. I was trying to film him through the trees. I could just see his antlers spinning around, and then that jumbo thing just walks out from I don't even know where, and then just walks around my tree. I can't even tell you really where they came from. All I know is when I seen them, they were standing directly on where I'd walked through. So they were on to me, and you could see him, he was real jumpy. I was camping here at exactly this time last year for the same reasons that I'm camping here this year, to set up trees ready for the raw. But stupid Nato only set up one tree in 2020, and that was this one. Put all his eggs in one basket, so to speak. And over the home detention period in 2020, I left my trail camera on the scrape down there, and my trail camera was there for 6 weeks. For 6 weeks, you weren't allowed to hunt public land. And when I got my trail camera, there was a good buck on the trail camera, but he'd only been there for 5 days in a row over that 6-week period. And I thought, what are the chances of me being in the tree on the right day? And I needed some new spots, so that's what led me this year to making sure that I had 5, 6 or however many trees I could figure out in my camping time to be ready for the raw. I I only came to this tree because there was no wind today, no wind forecast. And this spot is on a high point, and it doesn't matter if the wind swirls or if the wind isn't consistent or the wind is consistent. It doesn't matter where my wind goes, there's always somewhere where it's not going to go, is what I'm trying to say. There's a chance of an animal walking in to bow range here. I could have smoked that buck. I could have absolutely smoked him. I really want to get him in hard antlers, my problem. I got a good mate who's a taxidermist, and I want another buck on my wall at home. And I don't want to smoke him in velvet, even though he looks so fat. Gosh, he would be good to eat. I'm just about choking talking. Nato is definitely on form. 2021 is going to be my year. I'm going to finally get my big mature buck on public land. I can feel it. I just know it. I'm going to get down out of this tree pretty soon. Going to do a little bit of a mission around. The only roaring I've ever heard myself out on this public block comes from way down in by the creek here, and there's a heap of ridges that meet at the bottom there, and the wind's going to forever swirl down there, and I'd never hunt down in there. I have walked down in there in the rain a few times to try and catch a buck out, but what I'd like to do is have another tree that's closer to that area, and if I'm hunting this tree and I've got no action, then I got another tree slightly closer to that main scrape. Well, that ends another day of Operation Observation, and what a day it was. Tomorrow is all about getting some meat. My alarm clock is going off at 4 in the morning, having breakfast, and then I've got an hour and a half walk out to what I'm calling the meat spot. The meat spot is a heavily beat down game trail that is coming in off some grass, some paddocks, some scrubby looking paddocks. And I reckon any deer that are out there in the night time are going to come down that heavily beat down trail in the morning time, and Nato's going to be swinging in a tree. Lopsided bucks, pigs, goats, and maybe a very unlucky spiker are on the hit list. It took an hour and a half to get here, get in my tree and be fully ready to shoot. The wind is perfect, exactly what the forecast said. The wind's supposed to pick up today, which is a good thing because I'm only like 3 meters off the ground here, and it's going to be real hard to draw the bow with a deer 15 meters away or 8 meters away. I got an 8 meter shot straight down here, and I got a 15 meter shot down to the pad, and it's all scraped up again. A buck since I was here last time has scraped the hell out of that pad yet again. The chances of seeing a deer today, in my mind, is really, really good. All I gotta do now is sit back and wait and hope that there's deer out in those scrubby private paddocks, and that they leave those paddocks, come back onto the public, and walk right under Nato. I just made a huge stuff up. I'm shaking like an absolute leaf. I could hear something coming. Thought it was a deer, so I was trying to film it. When it got to about 15 meters, I could see that it was a big boar, and he was coming straight to my spot. But by the time I put my phone in my pocket, grabbed my bow, turned the camera on, got my release aid out, he'd already walked past. He was right there. Right there at 8 meters broadside, stopped perfectly. If I'd just been focused on trying to shoot stuff rather than trying to film it, I would have just... That would be the biggest pig of my life. When he got down there, I was trying to get him to come back, but he wouldn't have a bar of it. But I'm going to keep coming back to this spot. That pig might do the same thing another day or tomorrow, or come back this other way. That was a huge boar. The wind has finally picked up as it was forecasted to. I haven't even been able to talk for the last 2 hours because it's been so quiet. And I've had animals all around me. It has been nuts. Like 5 minutes after that pig walked past and left, I heard something coming back this way, and I was... in my little head, I was sure that it was that big boar coming back. Just turns out that it was a doe with a fawn. And I had my bow in my hand with the camera on my bow recording when I wanted to have my phone in my hand to film the doe and the fawn. 5 minutes later, there's something else coming from the way that boar went straight at me. And I got a glimpse at it through the trees here, and I was sure it was the boar. So again, I grabbed my bow, had to wiggle myself around in the tree as quietly as I could. Was sitting here waiting for that pig to walk out into that little gap. And then it was another doe with a fawn. So again, I had my bow in my hand when I wanted to have my phone so I could film the doe and the fawn. It's so crazy how the littlest things can make all the difference. If I had my phone in my hand when I'd seen those two does with the fawns, I would have had epic doe and fawn footage. And if I'd had my bow in my hand instead of my phone when that pig walked through, I would have a dead pig, a huge boar. Gutted. Not only that, but I've heard goats bleating up the hill up here. And if they come down here, they're in real trouble. After missing that goat when I was here last time, I packed up my motorbike, organised my hunting gear and went back out to the bull farm to try and find some live targets. And I found some live targets.
Matt.
Oh, you bugger. I shot one goat at 5 metres. All I wanted to do was replicate that shot that I ballsed up with the goat just up the hill here. So yeah, shot a goat at 5 metres. He didn't go far at all, both lungs. Found another goat, big black billy goat. Stood in front of him for 15 minutes. Waited until they had the perfect broadside shot and smashed him as well, straight through both lungs. He only went 40 metres and I watched him go down. And then I ended up smashing another one the day later at 15 metres, so 3 for 3. And in all 3 shots, I can tell you where I was aiming, how I was holding the bow, where the pin was, where the arrow was going to come out, and I didn't snap the shot. So yeah, I ain't going anywhere. I'm going to hang out here until probably 3 o'clock today in the hopes to see something else. I've had 4 deer and a huge boar inside 8 metres and it's only 10 o'clock. So between now and 3 o'clock, what else is going to happen? Well, I have very, very little to report for the last 5 hours of swinging around in a tree. I watched a rabbit run along the trail the same as that other rabbit did earlier today. And that's about it. Oh no, hang on. I set up my trail camera on the tree just down here, pointed at the very spot where that massive boar was standing this morning, just to see if he comes back through tonight or this afternoon, and also to see if there's any action here this afternoon. If there is, I might have to wait here all day tomorrow. But right now I got a charging westerly, so I want to go to the other 2 spots where my trail cameras are and just see what a charging westerly is doing at those 2 spots. And I'm going to swap out the cards in those 2 trail cameras and go back to camp. The last 2 mornings I have been up super early, got myself out the back and test hunted those 2 trees. The spot that I call Rub Ridge, in both a westerly and a southerly, the wind there does nothing but swirl, making that spot pretty much useless. On the bright side,
The trail camera that I had set up at the base of my tree at Rub Ridge caught a big mature buck, and I mean a big one. He's a ripper. But yeah, no point hunting that tree. The other spot that I had set up where I could see the scrape from a big tree with a fork in it, that tree is also useless. The wind there was a lot more stable, but I had a doe come in on me, and she was underneath my tree for like maybe 5 minutes after walking over my ground scent. And if that was a big buck, I just couldn't get a shot at her. The shots there are just so limited. And one thing I'm learning with tree hunting is you just need to have a view. You need to have multiple shots. So Rub Ridge is useless because the wind's swirling. That spot's useless because it just doesn't have enough shot opportunities. So today, this afternoon, I did a mission around and I've located 2 new trees. They are both a little bit higher on the hill, so the wind should be more consistent. They are both in slightly more open areas, so I should have more shot opportunities. And they are both within earshot of those scrapes. And this year I really want to try rattling antlers and croaking. So if the bucks are on those scrapes, hopefully I can rattle antlers and croak and draw those bucks off those scrapes up to the areas where the wind will hold and get a shot at them there. So that's tomorrow's plan. I'm going to get myself out there and rig 2 new trees that I picked out today. Fingers crossed after I've climbed these 2 trees that I'm happy and I am fully ready for the 2021 Raw. I sit just outside my tent at night time and eat my dinner, and quite often I see bats flying around, but I haven't said anything because in my world, if you didn't film it, it didn't happen. Well, tonight I managed to film it with my phone, so I see bats at night time when I'm sitting out there having dinner. It's awesome. No mucking around today. I've already set up my tree. It was piss easy. There was nothing required. And from now on, I'm not going to make spots work. I'm going to find spots that already work. This climbing up 2 or 3 other trees to cut down supplejack, and climbing up 2 or 3 trees before you find the tree that kind of fits, it's just a waste of time. Like I said, this time in the Raw, this year in the Raw, I want to try rattling antlers. So in my mind, all I need to do is be close to the main pad, rattle antlers. If they work, then that's all I need. I've got an animal coming straight to me. So this spot here, I also reckon is going to have pads at it. There's antler damage on a couple of trees. There's a vine up here that's just torn to shreds from last year. Obviously, it's all last year's stuff. But I reckon this will be what they call the old satellite pad. So in my mind, the main pad is about 100 meters away. And regardless of whether the satellite bucks use this or not, that big buck is going to visit this, and if I rattle antlers and he thinks there's a scrap going on up here, he might come here to try and suss out what's going on, you know. And again, that's all I need. All I need is him to get within bow range of my tree. That's my spot, straight up there. This tree here is right at the back of the opening, and it's 20 meters from my pack and stuff that's in the tree right there. All that's left to do now is set up a trail camera and on to tree number 2. Check this out for a cunning plan. Trail camera's up in the tree. It'll pick anything up coming along this trail down to my shooting spot. And the click from the camera the other day on that big buck down the hill, he heard the click of the camera, stopped, freezed in the camera, and then turned around and went the other way. So I'm hoping if the click's coming from up in the trees, then it might not be as spooky to the deer.
Spot number 2 is just as good as spot number 1. I am super happy. All I've done is climb the tree and I got shots pretty much 180 degrees. All this side is all open. Any deer walks through this side, I got a shot. It's a little bit thick in behind me, but in my mind I want to hunt here in a north to west wind, which the wind's going to be coming this way, so I doubt a deer is going to come from behind me anyway. But yeah, super happy. This tree is also on a high point, so as much as I want to hunt it on the right wind, it doesn't matter which way the wind goes, it should be consistent, so I should be able to hunt this tree on any wind and there'd be a chance of getting a deer. Just along down here, there's a mean creek crossing. It's just beaten up. There's like 5 different places that the deer cross the creek. They come straight up a little gut onto a ridge line, and then there's just trails, beat down trails that come all the way to the base of the tree. Just down there, there's a dry creek bed, and there's like 3 or 4 trails dropping down into that dry creek bed, and then those 3 or 4 trails go up the ridge on the other side. And there's a whole bunch of trails going to a fence. There's a fence that separates the private land from the public land, and the deer are going underneath the fence to get out into the grass, and then I'm guessing they're coming underneath the fence back into the bush when it gets daylight as well. So I am sitting on a whole bunch of game trails all meeting right here. Again, there is historic buck sign everywhere. There's old scrapes behind me. There's trees that have been smashed for eons. There's pungas that have been rubbed up. Stupid amounts of happy with the 2 trees today. They've been so easy. All I've had to do is climb them, check ranges, look at the trails coming in and out. I reckon I'm just about ready for the 2021 roar. See you next time, tree.
Back at camp, all cleaned up with a huge smile on my face in the knowledge of the 5 trees that I have at the back that is rigged and ready for the roar. You wouldn't believe it, but I just jumped the fence from the public land back onto my mate's farm, and there was a possum in the paddock eating grass like a cow. So Nato took the opportunity for a little bit of target practice, or did his part for conservation, or whatever you want to call it. Either which way, possum down. Tomorrow is my last day, and if nothing too exciting happens tomorrow, then this will be the end of the video. And the next time that I come back here, the bucks will have hard antlers, and I will be stupid amounts of keen to go try and get an arrow loose at one.